Hi, it's Fred Firestone, and welcome to the Punderdome's Pun Conversation. And I'm excited today because we have not the number two on the leaderboard, not the number three, but the number one on the all-time Punterdome leaderboard, Sam Homestar Punner Corbin with 36 wins. So anyway, very exciting, Sam, to be with you today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, we're going to talk, obviously, it's everything we do is pun related. So I
Mhm.
want to just get a feel for the early years. We'll talk about your Punderdome experience and how were you able to be so successful. And then we'll talk about some of your other pun activities and what you've done and what's worked and where you're going with everything. But let's start at the very beginning. Uh, did you have an experience were you brought up in a pun home where people punned a lot, your dad and your mom, or what were your earliest memories of punning?
My dad is truly brings pride to all dads who make, he is like the dad joke entry in the dictionary. I mean, I think I'm the only one of the three kids who like tolerated his puns at the dinner table. And I can't remember any of them in particular except his favorite pun, which had something to do with a lawyer who came in very well dressed and argued his case well. And then something about how afterwards he says, I went up to him and complimented him on the way he pressed his suit, which my dad just loves. But as a kid, yeah,
That's
I remember one of my first memories. I did not even know I was making a pun. I just saw a piece of fish on my plate that looked like a cigar, and I picked it up and I pretended to smoke it, and I said, "Look, Dad, smoked salmon." And I think the rest is history. But I didn't even know that that would be, how my brain worked as an adult. So,
Now Barry's your dad, right? Barry. So
yes,
did Barry
Barry Corbin.
Barry? I remember Barry. Yeah. So when you said smoked salmon, did it glimmer in his eye, and he thought, oh, this is my daughter gets it. We're kindred
I mean,
spirits.
he was young at the time. Sorry, I was young at the time. He probably barely remembers it now, so I can't say whether he, saw the future tunneling ahead of him. I think I've asked him once whether he thought that his daughter would be, like a professional punter, and he said absolutely not. I don't think he could have conceived in his wildest dreams that I would have found such a niche community for this.
But he realizes that the early years laid foundation for your success.
Oh yes. I mean, I hope that he knows how indebted I am to him for all of my success. He is the reason that I do this for sure.
You give an opportunity now, shout out to him. You want to say
Sure. I
something to
mean,
him?
shout out, he would
To your
definitely want
dad?
me to say go to strudelgame.com. I hope that's the
Okay.
URL. I love my dad. He has a love of words. My mom also. Like
Tell us about
she
Strudel. He created Strudel, right?
Oh yeah.
That's his
It's a
game.
game of anagrams that he worked on for like 7 years, and that he calls them turnarounds, which is, an anagram is a word that becomes another word if you jumble up the letters. And so I think he transitioned from puns at the dinner table to anagrams at the dinner table at some point. And he's very proud of it, and it's a very it here is, I think, maybe he'll take it as a compliment or an insult, but he's like sent it to Mensa and they wrote back saying this was too hard. So it's a very clever game.
Oh,
Yeah, I have fun playing it.
and you were saying your mom too. Is she a punter?
My mom is a Scrabble like enthusiast and really competitive about it. She's not, puns don't flow out of her the way that
Sure.
they flow out of my dad, but she really appreciates good wordplay. And I mean, you'd have to, like, they're partners in crime, clearly, in the way that I was raised with a love of words. I know that my mom just gave me an appreciation. She has a real command of the English language and loves words and thinks so deeply about how sentences are cast. So I'm very grateful to her as well.
Well, it seems like a wonderful one-two combo that
Yes.
allowed you to be so effective in the arena. That's
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
So any punning prior to the Punderdome?
Oh, for
Did you
sure.
pun in writing, or did you? I know you're a writer and you're a
Yeah.
videographer, and
Yes, many hats. I mean, I went to a theater, like a theater major. I had a theater major in university, and if you can believe it, where I kind of discovered that I would like to be doing this for a living was a wit and wordplay class that I took with a wonderful teacher named Mary Conway, who is a professional clown and teacher, of all kinds of like wit and wordplay is truly the summary of it. But she taught a class in which we were kind of tasked with learning to delight in the English language. We would take Shakespeare, we would take nonsense from different plays and just and mess with it. And do visual puns. I still remember we had an assignment once where we all had to come in and act out a pun. So I brought in, what did I do? I think I had a I was facing the back of the room and I had a bag of potato chips and I was holding it in my hands. And as I turned around, I squeezed the bag so hard that it popped and chips went everywhere. And I said something like, the face that launched 1,000 chips. It was so, I mean, these things are they're inane, but they are a kind of sign of that burgeoning love. Yeah.
So, I'm intrigued with this. Does she know, have you been in contact with her recent past?
Oh, yes, she is very proud of me. I
She
mean,
knows the
I have her on
impact that
Facebook
she's
still.
had on you. That's so
Yes, she
cool.
knows. She gifted
Yeah,
me a book when I was graduating called Nonsense by Susan Stewart. That's also been, it
yeah.
takes puns. It's like it expanded my view of how much I love words, and she has followed my successes. And the other person,
Exciting.
just so you know what my brand is, the other person who
Yes.
follows my successes is my high school librarian. So if you have any questions about the type of woman I've become, those are my fans.
Well, I think it's wonderful you have mentors that
Yeah.
follow your success. I mean, that's
Yeah.
rock and roll heaven, so to speak. That's
Yeah.
sweet. Nice.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's go to the Punderdome. When did you first walk in the doors of the dome? When do you recall? How long?
Well, I have to,
2000.
okay. You know better than I, but was it 2013, I think, as the
I
clapometer?
Well, yeah, I want to, but 2000. So that was the first. Your first dome was 2013.
Yeah, and I was on a date with a guy who told me about it. That's how I found out about the
All right.
Punderdome. Is I was on a date and I'm so sorry for how this sounds, but I just finished reading Infinite Jest and there are some wordplay in there. And I remember I was talking about one of these puns that I really appreciated, and he said, "Do you know about the Punderdome?" And of course, my life was ruined from there on in. So
Well, so this was the first Punderdome. Now, I know
yeah,
that before you were a contestant, you were the human clap meter, and
yes.
was that the first Punderdome you were the human clap meter?
I think I went to one Punderdome before I was the human clapometer. I remember being in awe of everybody, especially Rekha Shankar, who's formerly Punky Brewster. I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh. And Punda Express, Brian Agler,
yeah,
who
yeah.
he was just so incredible to watch. And I remember thinking like, I have to be closer to this. So yeah.
So at what point now, normally I recruit the clap meter. They don't come to me and say, I want to be the clap meter. Did I recruit you or did you approach me? How did that happen?
Oh, I sent you an email called my applaudication, and I remember it because I think you sent it back to me to remind me of what I'd said. It was something like responding to your call to arms by offering myself up as an ear to hands, or something just like
Yeah.
long and filled with silly turns of phrase. Yeah.
So I said yes without knowing you. We just said emailed
Yes,
back and forth. Oh, great. All
that's
right.
true. Yeah, you invited me in, and thank you for that, Fred. I
It
appreciate
was
your
the
trust in
best
me.
decision I've ever made. Uh, so sorry. So you clapometered, and then how many times did you observe before you said, this is something I want to do?
Definitely only a couple of times,
All right.
because by the time I think by the time I'd done the clapometer, I just thought I may as well try it.
So you were inspired by Brian Agler and Rekha Shankar, and that they were, I guess, 1-2-2-1 by that time. I mean, they were
Yeah.
the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah,
Right?
and
So
the
they,
way and it was also just seeing. I mean, they're both comedians and comedy writers, and so it was just kind of astounding to watch that blend of puns and a thing like performance, which is something that I was chasing. So yeah, it was astounding, and I wanted to do it.
But just by way of background, for those that people don't know, so we give people a topic, it's a group of 6 a topic, and they have about 2 minutes to prep on the topic, to write down what they're going to say. And we'll talk later about that. I'm curious your process. And then they each have 2 minutes to engage the crowd, to engage the clap, to the point of the clap, meter clap, recognizes applause, yada, yada, yada. That's how it works. So did you see in that process something that spoke to you? Did you like that idea of getting 2 minutes to prep on a topic and then doing stand-up?
It was like nothing I'd ever done before. I mean, I'd taken improv classes and had, you know, assignments in theater school, but it was something so different to kind of force my brain to come up with wordplay on the fly, which I guess I was naturally skilled at. But it and then you have the rule of like no downtime where people sing Fresh Prince. So I
Yeah.
it was such a surge of sensations from all sides. I don't remember the first time I ever took a whiteboard and paper, you know, marker and started writing things down. But yeah, it's quite, there's nothing like it.
Tell me more about that. And when you say nothing like it, I infer that that was a great experience for you. And at what point, so if you could answer that question, and also say, at what point did you see, did you think, well, gosh, I can do this. I can maneuver the mechanism. I can do well with this.
It's interesting you say maneuver the mechanism because I think over time, especially with the old model of having guest judges, which I know you're now bringing back, you were watching the way that the audience kind of responded to different techniques. You know, some people would have a one story with a lot of puns in it. Brian was famously always good at just somehow having like a compelling argument.
Yeah.
Rekha was like a master of syllables. I still remember my favorite one I've ever heard was the category was TV shows. And she said, hey, did you guys know that in the United States, you're no longer allowed to have sporting goods stores on the second floor of a building? That's right, America's next top models. And I was like, oh my God. So it wasn't just
That's,
chasing a skill with puns, it was like learning that
yeah.
there is a kind of technique to Punderdome and a
Yes.
delivery that wins the audience over. Yeah.
That's so true. I think that a lot of feedback we get, well, do I just get a pun? I do 3 puns and that's it? No, the whole idea of engaging the audience, and that process is different. You have to keep your own inimitable style. What I always love about you, you have so much energy and you enjoy what you're doing, and that's very evident. That's comes
Yeah.
across.
You know, I have to shout out Joe Berkowitz, who was another big kind of he provided another opportunity for all of us competitive punters to like look at the practice of what we were doing, because he wrote this book Away with Words about competitive punning, and he dedicated chapters to each of us who were at the time the regulars of the Punderdome.
Yeah.
And I remember his description of me was a moment of like thinking about the things I did, because I had these pants that were like MC Hammer, you know, like drop crotch pants with a low, you know, and I used to pull them over my arms to try to like get claps during the rounds, and I would run around the stage, and I did all kinds of things in retrospect were very humiliating, but you know,
Yeah.
it was he described the things that I was doing as like so joyful, and it really helped codify for me my understanding of what I love about Punderdome and how I do it when I'm on stage. Yeah.
Interesting. Let's put that in perspective. So again, we give people a topic in about 2 minutes to prep on the topic, and you each present for 2 minutes. And then sometimes we have a celebrity judge who offers their opinion about what he or she liked and didn't like. And then ultimately it goes to the audience via the human clap meter, who is calibrated, of course, in blindfold, and discerns the level of audience applause, comes up with a number, and the highest numbers go on to the next round. And so what you're saying is that a component of that, I guess, is when you have to get out there and engage the crowd, to engage the clap, your style there in part influences receptivity.
Yeah, I think I learned early on that I didn't have any issues with going all out to engage the applause. Like maybe other people have less physical exertion involved in the way that they engage the clap. But I was
Yeah.
like, I remember I just didn't mind doing anything to get it. I'll shimmy, do push-ups, pull my pants again entirely over my head. But yeah, it's fun because it also there's a real feedback when you see the crowd watching you kind of just take ownership of something that is, I think, can be really shameful or groan worthy, punning, and just admit the thing you're doing and be self-aware about how much fun you're genuinely having being so silly. Like, I think people really respond to that. So yeah.
That's interesting. And the only thing I would follow up and say is that that's your ability to engage the crowd. You still have to be a wonderful punter, and you got to be able to string your process together and really punch them. And I think you've done so wonderfully. So I think you've got to be able to, but those people that are wonderful engaged in the crowd, they don't have any puns. They don't go forward in the competition. So
That's
anyway.
fair. That's fair.
So I'm curious, how many times did you compete before you won? You recall?
Oh, I don't remember. I mean, what do you think it was, like 6 or 7? I don't know.
Well, I don't, it just seems like when you started to win, and I don't remember when
Mhm.
that was, you were unstoppable. I mean, I remember the time that when Punky Brewster left, she had 17 unveils. And I
Uh-huh.
remember, oh my gosh, and then I blinked my eyes and you have 36. Unveils is when you unveil a mystery box, it's a win. So
I
you
know.
really were on a tear the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think in the last couple of years when I kind of hit my stride as far as what my, I don't know, persona is on stage and locking down. And I think a big part of that, which I know we will talk about, is like my outside punning work. Has allowed me to kind of think about why I do what I do. I mean, all of the folks who do Punderdome, I think, have like a raison de pun. It's like we all know why we're doing this, whether it's a love of language or an enjoyment of the energy on stage, or just a combination of everything. So once I kind of locked into like that conviction on stage, it was really easy to keep doing. I don't want to say the same thing over and over again, but like keep applying the same effort to new categories and new topics. Yeah.
I find it interesting. So what was that conviction, or what part of the component of what you did you say, oh my gosh, this is exhilarating. I want to be here. When you break it down, what was it?
Punderdome is like a sporting event, and it's surreal in that way. I mean, and bless Joe, your daughter, for making the show, because she, as a comedian, is someone who has managed to kind of carve out space for weird things to exist
Yeah.
joyfully. And I think that's what my conviction is. It's like there's this kind of misfit aspect to Punderdome, but it
Mhm.
also is so deeply woven into the fabric of so many things. Like everyone in your audience either loves puns, tolerates puns, or hates puns and wants to be proven wrong by a friend who's like, trust me, this isn't your
Yeah.
average pun show.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's just the singularity of Punderdome. It's so surreal that it's like a rowdy party for people who are nerds.
Well, that's the intent. When we started it together in May 2011, and it's interesting. She had a friend of hers said, "Why didn't you she rented a basement in South Paul, so
Yeah.
in Park Slope, and I had no idea what she was going to do. And a friend of hers said, with a week to go, you ought to do a pun competition. There's one in Austin. So she called me up 3 days before. She says, how would you do that? Well, I've done business seminars for a long time, and I have game show sets. And so we talked about the human collapse meter. And so it was an interesting collaboration, but it was, I just so relish or value that interaction. And it was just
Yeah, I have to
exciting.
say, I'm sure that the collaboration that also has to do with what's so magical about Punderdome. It's like the apologetic quality of the show, where it was like a father and daughter trying to make something happen that you would never imagine happen, and Joe like consistently being embarrassed and hating puns, and you loving them, and that interplay is a lot of it. Really embodies how I feel about wordplay. I'm not proud of being this good at puns. Like I'm not proud of the way that my brain makes things that like would never see the light of day if not for the challenge, you know, but I think I experience a joy in that shame, and that comes back to like the self-awareness, and that's a lot of my persona on stage. I'll hear things come out of my mouth and I'll say, "Oh my God," you know. So
No, what fascinates me is that I think conventional wisdom and puns are dad jokes, and
mhm,
AKA an eye roll. It warrants
mhm.
an eye roll. And I've seen some pun competitions that are eye roll worthy. And what excites me is when I see you perform. I mean, we're moving body parts. It's not an eye roll. It's a side split. It
Yeah.
really is. It's not an it's not a groaner. It's people. It's very funny, and it's what I'd like to do is just get a feel for how the process works with you. I happen to have next to me something, a little item called the
Uh,
Punderdome art game.
okay.
Would you be okay if I pull a
Sure.
topic and
Yeah,
you just
sure.
tell us? So you have, we used to be 1.5, now it's 2 minutes. What's your 2-minute process? All right, okay. The card is fruits.
Fruits.
Okay.
Okay.
So what would be your, talk us through, now you've got a topic, you got 2 minutes to prep, you've got the Fresh Prince of Bel Air
Yeah.
theme song,
Yeah.
somebody's singing that, so you've got to concentrate, fill out your whiteboard. What do you do?
Well, if it's a category like fruit, which I've heard 100 times before, fruits and
Yes.
veggies, food, you know, I'll make a list. Like it's simple as that. I go through the mental fruit bowl. I start putting all the things in. I find little potential strings of category, like subcategories. So if we're talking berries, you know, it's very easy to do the strawberry, blueberry, blackberry, like trifecta. You know, you can tell a story with that. That's a little dirty, and I would never tell it because it's my dad's name. But you could also pull like the more obscure fruits, or you could think about, yeah, I guess with fruit it's a little bit basic because it's a category with a lot of familiar words, whereas if it were something else I might dig a little deeper. But with fruit, I feel like there's a lot of low hanging, you know, in its own category. It's hard to get too deep with it.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So, do you spend your time then populating your whiteboard of items in the category, and do you write puns at that time, or what's your process? Do you come up with an
Oh,
item in the category blueberry and then come up with a pun for that,
it
or do you
depends
just
on
get them
how
all down?
complex. Yeah, if the word is really complex, but like mentally I've made the pun really
Yeah.
quickly as I'm writing it down, I'll write it phonetically so that I know how I want to play on the words. So on occasion, I can't think of like a perfect example, but
Yeah.
it's I would write it down in the syllables of the word instead of the word itself, you know? So, for example, if the category was like medicine and I was, you know, I saw the word, I don't know, this is a bad example, but like doctor, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking, okay, I want to make a joke about how like this person cheated, so I docked her 2 points or whatever. I might write docked her on the board, knowing that
Got
my
it.
brain will understand that that's a pun on
Got
doctor,
it.
you know? Yeah.
So you'll write it so that you can see the pun in it, and then you'll take it from there when you're on stage.
On occasion, for sure. But
Okay.
there's a lot of times where I don't do that, and a lot of the puns I come up with are not on my whiteboard. I would say like my zingers are sometimes not on my whiteboard, my strongest ones. Those come to me sometimes while I'm thinking.
Amazing. All right. So do you ever get nervous going into this, or do you feel confident that you're going to bring it, or I mean,
I've
what's
never
the
not been
process?
nervous. You can ask Allie, aka Words Nightmare, or Nick, Daft Pun, Jersey, Lingo Star. Like I never don't just feel that churning in my stomach like it's a middle school dance. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I don't know why that hasn't gone away with as many victories as I have, and it's not a
Yes.
humble
Many,
brag.
many.
It's just like the exhilaration of potentially not being funny or not doing myself proud or not being original. Like I never is not anxiety inducing. Yeah.
But it's interesting because you and I can brag on you. You're always deliver on that. You're always original. You're very funny, and I got 36 reasons why. What my point is the right one.
Thank you. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, I don't know what it is, but I think what I love about, I mean, we're living through these times where Punderdome is virtual as everything else is. But the wonderful thing about live performance is it will never happen that way again. And I think the reason why I shifted into why I love Punderdome, even as I've moved away from like theater acting, is that
Yeah.
it still captures this kind of immediacy. Like it is still only going to be that night. And I have people who come up to me and they're like, you said this. And they'll tell me a pun I made 2 years ago that
Oh
they
my
will never
gosh.
stop thinking about. Yeah.
Freaking amazing.
It's
So are
so,
you,
yeah.
yeah. No, go. Yeah.
No, it's just so surreal where people be like, we've been following your work. You did insert phrase, I'll give you a terrible example. I'm sorry to everyone watching, but the category was alcohol. And this was like 3 years ago. And I did some kind of joke about how like I would date a guy, sometimes I tend towards the sex jokes. And I said something about how I would date a guy in Florida, and we would have sex, and all of his orgasms, I would like build a castle out of them, and it would be my Southern comfort. And truly, I've had multiple people remember that pun from
Oh, that's
years ago.
that's amazing. That's so. Do you have a lot of people? Will they come up to you, or you recognize, and people come up to you and say, "I remember this." Does that happen a lot?
Yeah. In fact, as recently as during the George Floyd protests, when I was on my bike at one of the bike protests, someone rode up next to me and said, "Hey, are you Homestar Punner?" And we had masks on. And I was like, "What?" And she said, "I recognized your voice from the chants you're doing, from the Black Lives Matter chants.
Oh my
I've heard
gosh,
it." It's so surreal the way people, I mean,
that's
I've been approached
bizarro.
outside restaurants, and it's always like it's as much my honor, and if not more my honor and or shame as it is theirs, because I'm like,
Yeah.
how did you find me? Where are you in the world? I want to like, hand them a form that's like, how did you find out about me and why do you care? So yeah.
That's you have to print up a lot of forms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, uh, let me ask you this. I'm always curious about this, and I really never have time to process it. But is there a sense of competition? I mean, are you looking to win? Is that important to you? And how does that work?
It used to be important to me to win, especially before surpassing Jersey. And it's our running joke. I told him that once I got ahead of him, I would retire. And I
Yeah,
really
I
did
remember.
make good on that. Yeah. And I'm competitive. I take that after my mother. I really want to be the best that I can be at puns and that whole process. And I think the competitiveness early on for sure, but there was competitiveness, but it faded over time as the pun family kind of cemented itself. Once we all started going to O. Henry together, and once I felt, I'm not going to be humble here. Once I felt I had a comfortable lead, I eased up. I remember Allie and I talking about doing duos, and we did a duo once. My brother Dan,
Yes, I
who
remember.
loves Punderdome, we did a
Yes.
duo once, but I was protective about doing duos because I was like, hey, I take this seriously. I really want to up my score,
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah, but now I my attitude has really changed in the last like year or two, where
Uh-huh.
the joy that I get out of listening to other people make clever jokes, like, ah, it's so great when you hear someone say something that goes in your memory as a wordplay lover,
Hmm.
and someone who I
Hmm.
consider I consider myself pretty discerning with my taste. You've
Sure.
probably seen me on screen or on stage roll my eyes or cringe at things being said. So, yeah.
Would it be fair to say that it's competitive, but still in all, you take joy in other people's successes, even though you might not win.
Absolutely.
And I've seen you do that before. If you second place, you acknowledge what the person did well, and it's all fun. There's no losers in the
Oh,
process, even
yeah.
if you don't win.
Especially when it's someone new or somebody who hasn't won in a
Yeah.
while or somebody who really wants it. It brings me so much joy because it's like, and Fred, I love Punderdome, but after a certain amount of wins, it's just a new appliance. It feels good. It feels good to have the score, but it doesn't. I can't remember my first win, anymore. Whereas
Yeah.
for someone
Yeah.
who's newer to it, it
Yeah.
makes their entire year or week or month,
Yes.
whatever. And that I live vicariously through that because I'm constantly trying to recover that first blush of Punderdome. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Uh, about a month ago, I received an email from you.
Uh-huh.
And what was the nature and extent of that? To tell us
I
what,
need
what,
more. You
what,
email me so often. I need
well,
more
the email
details.
where you felt that it was time to hang up your
Oh
hat,
yeah.
hang up
Yeah.
the hat email. So tell us what was your thought behind that, and what do you want to do, and
I think I
why did
told
you
you
decide to do
I
what you
think
did?
I told you that after this long, I not only wanted, I felt it was time to hang up my hat, but I also said I wanted to let someone else become the next Homestar Punner. I mean, that's very true. I have like, I love a modicum of local celebrity. I will forever cherish it, and I hope to maintain it.
Yeah.
But the Punderdome has given me so much, and I feel like I want someone else to get as much out of it as I do, and part of what I got out of it is winning. At this point, the joy of winning is, again, just taking out the mystery box and hoping it's not a $1. I hope, but mind you, I love my costume closet so much, and it's
Yes.
the envy of all my friends, so I don't mean
How many
to
costumes do you have, by the way?
so many, but not even counting the ones I've like given away to friends who
I
were
see.
really
Okay.
excited about it. But that was part of it, wanting somebody else to get to experience the joy that I experienced
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
also, I mean, I can't pretend that a virtual experience is anything like the live show. I'm excited about returning, but the virtual experience kind of really distills it to what it is as a pun competition, right? Because you don't experience the audience applause and that surround sound
Right. Right.
night. And
Yeah.
I think that brought home the point of wanting
Mhm.
to let someone else
I see. Yeah.
do the
Makes
challenge.
sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you envision ever, while the virtual arena is present, do you see coming back at some point? Or I know you said you're leaving the door open, but we'll
Yeah, I'm
see.
not saying never. I think maybe once live shows are happening again, and Punderdome's back on the stage, I'm not opposed to an alum drop in, but
Okay.
I
All right.
think I think yeah, till then.
All right. Well, very good. Uh, so it's been a wonderful run, and I just so appreciate what you've done. You're just amazing. I'm
Thank
holding
you.
up a 10, and I have a chicken costume I'm sending your way. So,
An inflatable chicken costume,
yes,
I
yes,
hope,
yes, yes.
just like the one I already have.
3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about your fun activities that I've seen just so many articles, your writing, your videos. Tell us a little bit about the writing and the videos and directions you've gone with puns.
Sure. My friend Adam Granick, a really brilliant guy, a composer and a violinist, he asked me in 2015 if I'd want to do 50 classical music puns in 120 seconds. He
Uh-huh.
like had some ideas. He loved Punderdome, loves Punderdome, and he and I and his friend Alana, we all just got together and kind of co-wrote this script that ended up going viral in like classical music circles.
And then what year
It
was
was a
this?
story. This was,
What year?
I think, 2015.
And how does it work? What's the process there? What is it?
So it's kind of like what you see at Punniest of Show at O. Henry in Austin, or like you've even seen like Colbert do a bastardized version of it, where he did the beers one time. It's a pun monologue using the words in the category very quickly. So in the classical music monologue, it was some story about I don't know. I was watching a roommate. I walked out into the street, and it was just like ongoing, ongoing. And every few seconds there was a pun. So it was like, oh, I narrowly missed a car and crescendo the sidewalk, and
Interesting.
like it was composers and instruments, and it really that was a bug
And
in
went
my ear.
viral? You said that
It
went
went
viral, was the first
viral.
one?
My old
Wow.
boss from Brooklyn, who was at InStyle, was like, "Do you want to do a fashion one?" Some
Yeah.
theater collaborators were like, "Do you want to do a baseball one?" Uh,
Yes.
it was just started snowballing. Oh, and then when the election happened, and I was kind of despairing about what to do,
Uh,
some friends and I, my wonderful, wonderful filmmaker friend, who you know very well, Lauren Greenhall, director extraordinaire,
yeah.
we were feeling helpless and hopeless, and we were like, let's use puns. Like it started to kind of it became like a really strong way to politicize
Interesting.
the things happening in a radical way, because I think you've probably seen in activist posters. People really do use wordplay when it serves the purpose, because it can drive at a new channel of thinking. It
Yes.
can break through the sea of words. So puns really started to be a resource for me of dealing with the world in a bigger way, and
It's
social
interesting.
commentary. Yeah.
So of the ones that you've done with your 50 puns in 20 seconds, would
Hmm.
you say that historical, the dictator puns, that's where you push the envelope of, I can make a statement, I can bring about change via my ability to pun.
That was a big one. I think, in the last 4 years, it's become clear that, poking fun at the way things are, it doesn't make change. Or it's just hard because we're living in such a satire,
Yes.
it's too on the nose to try to make fun of anything anymore. But that was after his first week in office. And so,
So,
yeah,
wow.
at the
Would you
time, I
say
remember thinking it was going to make change.
that's interesting? So, but who knows what makes change? But you felt
Yeah.
like your intent there was to use your ability to pun to further something you believed in. A pun,
Right.
it
And
was a
I
means
think
by which you could change something, perhaps.
absolutely. And I mean, so the transition went from, the classical music puns were just a silly story. That was the same with the fashion puns, a silly story that weaved in all of these puns,
Yeah.
right? With the historical dictators one, I saw an opportunity to take the names of, fascistic personalities from history and principles, and
Wow.
use them to write a monologue about the president's first
That's
week in
so
office.
interesting.
So that was
Wow.
my first experiment with kind
Yeah.
of merging subject matter. Actually, I did the same thing with the Powerful Lady puns I made with Lauren,
Uh-huh.
where it was names of famous women in history to
Yeah.
talk about the future. So I think puns can be really powerful when you use them subversively to hint at something, and kind of recover a little bit of power in a time of powerlessness.
Very well stated. So intriguing. You know, it sounds like to me that, and we talked about this a little bit, of all the the ones you've done, the 50 puns in 20 seconds, the historical dictator puns was really your favorite.
Yeah, I think that one stood out. I will say, while we were talking, I was reminded of one that I did that I think I think reaches a little higher, or is scores a little higher on my favorites list, but I never filmed it properly because I did it live at the O. Henry
Mm.
Pun Off. And
Okay.
that was my late night talk show host pun monologue, which I did do at
You
Punderdome.
did it, Punderdome. Yes, yeah, amazing.
That was one of my favorites because that was my
That
first
was that
experiment
killed.
doing with the like holding up the pictures of famous male late night talk show hosts to talk about how there were too many men in late night comedy.
Yeah,
And
that,
that was the most ambitious I think I've been with puns. It was fewer than 50. It was 90 seconds, but it was a time I really felt like, all right, this is it. This is the golden something, whatever's gold, the
it's
white whale.
fascinating though.
Yeah.
You transition from an end in of itself. This is the pun to the punning is a means by which you can convey to people your passion or interest or where you think change is necessary.
Absolutely. And I mean, Jersey, who is currently number two on the
Yes.
leaderboard, right? Jersey and I talk about this all the time. We both are very kind of academically brained. We both
Yes.
love wordplay. He's an O. Henry legend, very
Yes.
much
Yes.
more of a celebrity nationally in punning. But I think we both don't like the low hanging fruit.
Yes.
We
Yes.
want the wordplay that reaches higher, and I think we're constantly in search of ways to do that, creative ways to do that.
It seems to me the only thing for us to do now was to not talk about what reach higher looks like, but let's look at what reach higher is. Erica, can you play the video, please?
Oh dear.
Okay, what is it?
Yes.
Sam?
Yeah. What?
Okay, tell us about this.
Hi,
Okay.
I'm Sam Corbin, Punderdome champion, and this is 50 historical dictator puns in 120 seconds. We need to have a talk or a serious conversation about the new president. If you haven't gotten a propaganda at the news this week, you might want to set the last few days of genocide to look at just how determined Trump seems to reprise all the mistakes of the past. And he's more than just airing his grievances on Twitter. Now he's inspiring furor to the tune of executive orders, where once journalists were mocked, they're now being silenced. I mean, the man is so studied in suppression tactics, he's practically a Stalingrad. But let's go ahead and assess the damage, shall we? Here's what you guys should really know about Trump's first 7 days in power. The ACA repeals, pretty cagey because the GOP hasn't introduced plans to replace it. They might just undoctor a nation, leaving a whole lot of more Americans without insurance. Feel free to check a poll on this, but I don't think Trump's interests are the same as the US's are. The global gag rule didn't exactly inspire us women to lean in. We all knew Trump was a sexist ghoul, a guy who's admitted to sexual assault, whose own wife's face read terror on Inauguration Day. But regulating women's bodies demonstrates more than a cool lack of common sense. It's a crime, yeah? When it comes to crime, Trump's no hero. He totally just blames immigrants. In fact, his latest order tried to marshal a lot of them out of the country, forgetting that without them, America wouldn't exist at all, but sheer stupidity aside, he's no pal of equal rights, and there's no telling how many anti-immigration efforts the executive branch will helm the second our backs are turned. Trump may even nix the entire foreign workers visa program, a loss of which would mean dire things for science. Despite a barrage of scientific facts on Twitter, Trump still doesn't accept climate change. Since he wasn't able to muscle any members of the National Park Service, we might even see a forest disappearance. Not that he wasn't already going to wash Tunshue with the Keystone Pipeline. If he continues this denial, we might even end up with acid rain. Meanwhile, Kellyanne Conway's chairman mouth continues to stir the opinion poll pot. There's no room for idiom and data, but she still seems happy to cast her own interpretation over the numbers. When you interview her on a show, she asks you to accept alternative facts. Listen, I don't know why Sean Spicer thinks he must erase Dippin' Dots from the face of the earth, but what I do know is this. Even if you can't see guile in Trump's methods, and I don't know how you could not see it, this is week one. It's going to get worse, so we can't afford to just ignore him or gloss over when he garbles the facts. So have a day lamenting the state of affairs, then get off of your butt and into the streets. Even if you can't personally hand Trump a subpoena, sharing your outrage about what this man gets to do is powerful. Stay informed about who's saying what into Trump's ear. Continue to let your anger show to rile public opinion and let the new president know he stands alone. Also, his tie is stupid. Okay, end of tie rant.
Well.
Amazing, amazing. So what do you think when you see that?
Well, I think a lot of those things came true. I mean, we're on the, he's like trying to start a race war now. So truly, like, I'm glad that I was as radical in my words then as I was now, even though it may threaten my, immigration status eventually. I'm Canadian. But yeah, I honestly, watching that is it reminds me of how much I really do stand by the use of wordplay to say something. I think it has a time and a place. Like the harder life has gotten, the more urgent things have become, the less I feel there's necessarily room, or the less the kind of humorous response is needed. It's not like the service act that I felt it was when I recorded that. And I really do think about it when I'm getting the urge to make another one. I'm like, is this the time? And if it's not, I just don't. But I'm proud of that. Yeah.
So you should be. Amazing. So what's the future, the pun future for you?
Well, I am working on written projects, both short and long form. I occasionally have things in like the New Yorker's Daily Shouts that are wordplay focused, I'm working on some like longer projects that things haven't been signed on the dotted line, so there's no point in saying much about them. But I have not lost my love of wordplay, and if anything, I'm just trying to continue being ever more kind of expansive about the goals that it can accomplish, and the space that I feel that particular like radical humor can occupy, and where it can pervade and be useful and help people, because that's what humor is, right? It's curative. So yeah.
That's a wonderful arena that you're in. It's not just fun for fun's sake. It's fun to bring about change or awareness, and that's a whole other dimension. So very exciting. Yeah. Very exciting. So, the question I always get about you, people ask me, so tell me, is Homestar Punner, is she a comedian? Is she a writer? How do you define yourself? When you say I'm Homestar Punner, I'm Sam Corbin, I what's your 30-second commercial? What do
I
you?
explore that question with my therapist at least once a month, but I would say I'm mostly a comedy writer, a humorist. You know, I'm a writer. Is that feels like a very comfortable umbrella. I write I write a lot of for the internet. I write some things in print. But yeah, I don't I hesitate to use the word comedian sometimes just because I feel like when I say comedian, people think stand-up comedy, which I don't really do. I've done it,
Yes.
but it's not my
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
space. But yeah, I say comedy writer or writer. So hopefully that's enough of a definition to go on. But you know, my official visa title for anyone who asks, you can tell them I'm an alien of extraordinary ability. That always impresses people.
An alien of extraordinary ability?
That's the official title on the Department of, you know, Homeland
So
Security.
that's not something you come up with. That's what they've
No.
given. That's the
No,
title
that's what
they've given you.
me. It's pretty
Oh, it's
flattering.
so intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
It calls for a number of follow-up questions. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah, I
But-
mean, again, a question I ask my therapist all the time, truly.
Wow.
So I don't quite know, but it means, you know, you meet a standard of being kind of like a national treasure in your own right, which I have to say, being, you know, a pun champion, very easy to say, very easy to become the best for me. You know, that's something that not many people do, and that becomes a kind of sort of national treasure. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, as I've told you this all the time, if you have any character reference
Oh
or a
my
pun
God.
character reference, I will take any call up till
Yes.
11 o'clock Central
Yes.
Time.
Yes.
But, it's been such a sweet time speaking with you. You are such a gem.
Likewise.
And, you know, just wish you the best. And we hope you come back at some point when
Thanks,
the
Fred.
time is right.
Oh, you
But
won't get rid
have
of me
made-
so easy. The Pun family is my forever home. Truly,
You-
I can't wait to keep following its successes and the success of
well.
all its members. So
Very good. Great pun conversation. I wish you well. And again, a pleasure talking with Sam Corbin, aka Homestar Punner.
thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, Fred.
Bye.